Peace and grace to you, beloved child of God. There are moments in your life when you can feel a shift in the atmosphere, a pull in your spirit, a tug on your heart, a sense that something is unfolding behind the scenes, something you can't quite explain, yet you feel it deeply. And if you're here right now, listening to this message, is because your spirit already knows something is coming, something is moving, something is aligning. Something is waking up in the heart of the one connected to you. Your soulmate is finally reaching the point they've been avoiding, the point they've been delaying, the point they weren't emotionally strong enough to step into before. They are finally ready to speak, not casually, not halfway, not with confusion, but with clarity, with honesty, with vulnerability, with a depth they never showed you before. This message today is not random. It's not accidental. It's not a coincidence. You are hearing this because something in your story is turning, and whether you realize it or not, their silence has been breaking, their walls have been cracking, their avoidance has been tiring, their heart has been softening. There is something they need to say to you, something they've been holding inside, something they've been wrestling with, something they tried to outrun. But truth has a way of rising to the surface, and their truth about you cannot be suppressed anymore. Maybe you felt the shift. Maybe you've sensed their energy. Maybe you've had dreams. Maybe you've been feeling their emotions as if they were your own. Maybe you've been waking up with them on your heart, even after you tried to release them, even after you told yourself you were done, even after you decided to move forward. But here's the reality. When a connection is spiritual, when it's soul deep, when it's tied to purpose, detachment isn't logical. Separation isn't final. Silence isn't closure. There is something bigger at work. And today, we're going to walk through 7 powerful revelations. 7 truths your soulmate has finally accepted. 7 things they're now ready to speak. Not from ego, not from fear, not from confusion, but from the deepest part of their heart. Each part of this message is going to help you understand what has been happening behind the scenes. Why their silence felt so heavy. Why their distance felt spiritual. Why their energy never fully left you. Why the connection seemed to pause but never disappear. And as we go through these 7 truths, I want you to stay open, stay grounded, stay receptive. Because for many of you, this message will feel like confirmation, personal, specific, aligned with what you've been sensing. Before we begin, if this content already resonates with your spirit, if you feel seen, if you feel understood, if you feel like this message was meant for you, I want to invite you to subscribe, not out of obligation, but because every time you're here, you're investing in your emotional healing, your spiritual clarity, your personal growth, your heart's alignment. This channel exists to help you see the truth, to help you heal, to help you understand the deeper layers of love, connection, purpose, and timing. And if you want to support the channel in a deeper way, with a super thanks, a comment, a like, a share. Every single one of those gestures helps this message reach the people who need it most. People just like you. People who are navigating love with depth. People who want the truth, not the illusions. Now, take a moment, breathe, relax your shoulders, come fully into this moment, because what you're about to hear will bring clarity, will bring understanding, will bring revelation, and may even bring peace to questions you've held for too long. Let's begin. Number 1, they're ready to admit they were afraid of loving you at the level you required. There comes a moment when a person can no longer hide from themselves. A moment when truth becomes louder than fear. A moment when the heart refuses to stay silent. Your soulmate has reached that moment. They confessed that the reason they pulled back, the reason they hesitated, the reason they went quiet, the reason they acted confused, had nothing to do with a lack of love. It had nothing to do with a lack of interest. It had nothing to do with you not being enough. They stepped back because they were afraid of the intensity of what they felt, afraid of the depth of the connection, afraid of the responsibility that comes with loving someone who carries purpose, someone who carries wisdom, someone who carries emotional maturity, someone who carries light. They weren't afraid of you. They were afraid of who they would have to become to love you correctly. Because loving you requires presence. Loving you requires emotional honesty. Loving you requires consistency. Loving you requires communication. Loving you requires follow-through. Loving you requires protection. Loving you requires spiritual grounding. And at the time, they didn't have that foundation. Not fully. Not consistently. Not in a way that could match the strength you carry. They confessed that you made them feel seen in a way they couldn't hide from. You saw through their walls, through their facade, through their silence, through their excuses. You saw the softness they were trying to protect, the vulnerability they were afraid to show, the wounds they were still carrying, the fears they never spoke about, the parts of themselves they hadn't healed. And instead of feeling exposed in a negative way, they felt known. They felt understood. They felt held. Without you having to say many words, you loved them with discernment, with patience, with sincerity, with emotional intelligence, with depth. And they weren't used to that kind of love. They were used to surface-level connections, situations that didn't require real effort, relationships that didn't challenge their growth, people who tolerated their distance, people who didn't require accountability, people who didn't demand emotional truth. You didn't chase them. You didn't beg. You didn't plead. You didn't shrink yourself. You didn't settle for crumbs. You didn't overextend to compensate for their avoidance. Your strength intimidated them. Your clarity humbled them. Your presence disarmed them. Your depth confronted them. And their spirit was not prepared for that level of intimacy, that level of vulnerability, that level of real connection. They admitted they were afraid of failing you, afraid of hurting you, afraid of disappointing you, afraid of not being enough. Not because you made them feel inadequate, but because they didn't know how to love someone who didn't operate from fear, someone who didn't use manipulation, someone who didn't settle for emotional half versions of people. Your standards weren't controlling. They were healthy. Your boundaries weren't rejection. They were protection. Your expectations weren't impossible. They were aligned with actual partnership. But they were not emotionally mature enough to rise to that level back then. Not yet. Not in the version of themselves they were living in. Not with the emotional tools they had. Not with the habits they were still clinging to. So they did what people do when they feel unprepared. They ran. They pulled back. They went silent. They convinced themselves they weren't ready. And in many ways, they were right. But here is the truth they finally admitted. Your love didn't scare them. Their unhealed parts did. Your depth didn't overwhelm them. Their lack of emotional readiness did. Your devotion didn't intimidate them. Their fear of growing did. You did not break them. You awakened them. You did not pressure them. You revealed what they were avoiding. You did not demand maturity. You inspired it. And though they walked away, though they hid behind silence, though they tried to bury what they felt, your connection stayed with them. Your presence stayed in their spirit. Your absence became a teacher. Your distance became the mirror they needed. They confessed they are no longer afraid of loving you, because they are no longer afraid of who they have to become to do it right. They are growing. They are healing. They are maturing. They are finally stepping into the version of themselves who can match your heart, your consistency, your intention, your love. They're ready now. Ready in ways they weren't then. Ready in ways that feel grounded. Ready in ways that feel spiritual. Ready in ways that feel intentional. Ready to love you at the level you've always deserved. Number 2, they're ready to admit they tried to replace you and failed every single time. There is a truth your soulmate has been carrying quietly. A truth they haven't had the courage to speak. A truth that has humbled them, softened them, broken them open in ways they never saw coming. They tried to replace you. They tried to distract themselves. They tried to move on. They tried to silence the connection. They tried to talk themselves into settling. They tried to convince themselves it wasn't that deep. But every attempt failed. Not because you are impossible to replace, but because the connection was never surface level. It was spiritual. It was soul deep. It was something their spirit recognized long before their mind was ready to admit it. They tried to fill your absence. But substitutes don't satisfy the soul. Temporary attention doesn't heal emptiness. Casual affection doesn't touch the spirit. Superficial connection doesn't reach the depth that you reached in them. They confessed they didn't understand what you were to them until they met people who gave them everything except what you carried. Chemistry without depth. Attraction without alignment. Attention without consistency. Company without emotional safety. Presence without spiritual resonance. They said every connection after you felt shallow. Like drinking water that still left them thirsty. Like eating food that didn't nourish them. Like conversations that never reached their heart. Like affection that didn't settle their spirit. Nothing clicked. Nothing aligned. Nothing felt like home. And it wasn't because other people were bad. Or unworthy. Or unkind. But because those people were not you. They didn't carry what you carry. They didn't connect where you connected. They didn't love with the intention you loved with. They didn't speak to the part of your soulmate that only you awakened. Your soulmate tried to pretend they were fine. They tried to act like they were healed. They tried to present themselves as unbothered. They told themselves they could detach, move forward, start over. But your spirit stayed with them. Your presence stayed in their memory. Your voice stayed in their heart. Your energy stayed in their soul. They found themselves comparing. Not intentionally. Not disrespectfully. But naturally. Involuntarily. Automatically. Comparing the emotional safety you offered to the inconsistency they found elsewhere. Comparing the intimacy they had with you to the distance they felt with others. Comparing the peace you brought into their life to the internal chaos they felt without you. They tried to rebuild without you. But the foundation wasn't strong. Not because they were incapable, but because they were building with the wrong person, on the wrong timing, with the wrong intentions. They didn't realize it then, but they realize it now. You weren't just a chapter. You were the lesson. You were the transformation. You were the mirror. You were the catalyst. You were the shift. Your love didn't just touch their heart. It activated their soul. And when a love activates the soul, you can't replace it. You can't escape it. You can't silence it. You can't downgrade from it. Your soulmate confessed that the more they tried to move on, the more they realized how much you meant to them, how deeply you touched their spirit, how much you taught them, how much you awakened in them. You were not another person in their life. You were an anchor. You were a mirror. You were a turning point. You were a spiritual assignment. They admitted that they finally understand why nothing worked, why no one felt right, why every connection felt out of place, why every attempt left them restless. The truth is simple. Their soul wasn't finished with you. Their spirit wasn't done with the connection. Their heart wasn't ready to release what was real, what was aligned, what was divine. They tried to replace you. And every failure brought them deeper into the truth, not of what you were, but of who you were, their person, their counterpart, their reflection, their match. And now, they can no longer deny it, no longer hide from it, no longer pretend they don't feel it, no longer lie to themselves to feel safe. They're ready to admit it, openly, honestly, vulnerably. You are irreplaceable, because what you carried was never temporary. It was purpose. It was alignment. It was something only you could carry for them. And now, they're ready to speak it, out loud, without fear, without hesitation, without running from the truth anymore. Number 3, they finally understand why God separated you, and why they couldn't come back until now. There is a revelation your soulmate has been holding, a truth that only makes sense to them now, a truth they could not understand when the separation first happened, a truth that felt confusing, painful, unfair, sudden. But now, after time, after reflection, after growth, after being humbled, they finally understand why God pulled you two apart. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't rejection. It wasn't abandonment. It wasn't failure. It was protection. It was preparation. It was spiritual alignment. It was divine timing. It was pruning. It was maturing. It was rebuilding from the inside out. Your soulmate has finally reached a place where they can admit this. They weren't ready. Not spiritually. Not emotionally. Not mentally. Not relationally. And definitely not at the level of maturity required to carry a love like this. They now see that if the connection had continued in the state they were in, It would have collapsed under the weight of unhealed wounds. It would have been poisoned by pride. It would have been obstructed by fear. It would have been limited by their emotional immaturity. They needed growing. They needed awakening. They needed breaking. They needed soul correction. They needed transformation that could only come through separation. They now understand that God didn't take you away. God placed you aside, set apart, protected, covered, sheltered from the version of them that was incapable of loving you correctly. They admit they loved you, but they loved you from a place of fear. Fear of being vulnerable. Fear of being seen. Fear of being known. Fear of not being enough. Fear of being hurt again. Fear of losing themselves. Their fear was louder than their love. Their hesitation was louder than their truth. Their trauma was louder than their intentions. So God separated you. Not to destroy the connection, but to save it. Not to end the story, but to prepare the next chapter. Not to remove love, but to rebuild the people who were meant to carry it. Your soulmate finally understands that separation was the reset they didn't know they needed. It forced them to confront themselves. It forced them to grow. It forced them to take accountability. It forced them to break cycles. It forced them to stop running. It forced them to face wounds they spent years avoiding. They realized that God was not denying them love. God was developing them for love. Real love. Covenant love. After everything they've walked through. After everything they've learned. After everything they've confronted. After every layer God has peeled back. They feel ready to return. Not as the same person. Not with the same wounds. Not with the same fears. Not with the same defenses. But with maturity, accountability, clarity, humility, wisdom, intentionality, and genuine readiness. They are ready to speak what they couldn't speak before. They are ready to love the way they couldn't love before. They are ready to show up in ways they couldn't show up before. They are ready to give what they didn't know how to give before. The separation made sense. Not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. And now, they finally understand. And they are ready to explain, ready to admit, ready to open up, ready to step into the love they were once too afraid to receive. Number 4, they're ready to tell you why they pulled away. And it had nothing to do with you. Your soulmate has been carrying a truth that weighed on them heavily. A truth they were scared to speak back then. A truth that created distance, silence, confusion. A truth that made you question your worth. When in reality, it had absolutely nothing to do with you. They didn't pull away because they stopped caring. They didn't pull away because they replaced you. They didn't pull away because you lacked something. They didn't pull away because they found someone better. They pulled away because they were overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they felt for you. It hit them deeper than they were prepared for. They weren't ready to handle the responsibility of a connection that required emotional honesty, consistency, presence, transparency, growth, accountability. You awakened a version of them they weren't prepared to become. You stirred emotions they didn't know how to manage. You exposed fears they spent years burying. And instead of facing those fears, they ran. Not from you, but from their own unhealed places, from their own insecurities, from their own limitations, from their own shadows. You touched the places in them they spent years protecting, years hiding, years avoiding. You saw them. You felt them. You reached parts of them that no one had ever reached. Parts they didn't want anyone to see. Love felt dangerous to them. Not because of you, but because they didn't trust their own capacity to hold it, to nurture it, to protect it, to show up for it. You triggered transformation. And transformation always brings discomfort. Sometimes even fear. So they chose distance, silence, withdrawal. Not because they didn't feel deeply, but because they felt too deeply, and didn't know how to express it, didn't know how to communicate the intensity, didn't know how to stand in the vulnerability that real connection demands. They didn't want to disappoint you. They didn't want to fail you. They didn't want you to see the broken parts of them, the unhealed parts, the insecure parts, the unprepared parts. So they pulled away, not because you were too much, but because they believed they were not enough. They were fighting internal battles you knew nothing about, battles they didn't know how to explain, Battles that made them feel undeserving of the type of love you offered. They carried wounds from the past. Wounds that taught them love equals loss. Vulnerability equals danger. Openness equals pain. Attachment equals heartbreak. And when they felt genuine connection forming with you, their mind responded with fear. Fear told them to run. Fear told them to hide. Fear told them to protect themselves. They didn't pull away because you weren't worthy. They pulled away because they couldn't see their own worth. They didn't retreat because they didn't want you. They retreated because they felt unprepared to keep you. They chose distance because distance felt safer than being seen. Safer than being vulnerable. Safer than risking losing something real. But now, after time, after growth, after reflection, after healing, they finally see clearly. They realize that running didn't protect them. It only prolonged their healing. They realized that pulling away didn't make the connection disappear. It only deepened the longing. They realized that silence didn't weaken the bond. It strengthened their awareness of what they felt. They realized that fear was the real enemy. Not intimacy. Not you. Not love. And now, they are ready to admit what they never said. The distance was about them. Not you. Their silence was about their fear. Not your value. Their withdrawal was about their wounds. Not your worth. Your soulmate wants to finally speak the truth. They want to tell you they regret making you feel unchosen. Regret making you question your value. Regret leaving you in confusion. Regret letting fear dictate their behavior. They're ready to take responsibility. Ready to explain. Ready to own what they couldn't own back then. Ready to be transparent instead of silent. Present instead of distant. Honest instead of withdrawn. They want you to know you were never the problem. Not once. Not ever. And now, they want to show you with action. Not just words. That they are no longer running. No longer hiding. No longer shrinking. No longer letting fear make decisions. They're ready to show up. Ready to speak. Ready to love. Ready to be seen. Ready to be real. And for the first time, they aren't afraid of what that will require. Number 5. They want to tell you what they didn't say. All the things you deserve to hear back then. There is something your soulmate has been holding inside for far too long. Something that kept building up. Something they wished they had the courage to say earlier. But fear muted their voice. Pride silenced their truth. Timing shut their mouth. Now they're ready to say everything they should have said back then. They want to start with the truth. They cared for you more than they showed. More than they expressed. More than they had the emotional maturity to communicate. Your presence mattered to them. Your energy affected them. Your voice reached places in them that no one else ever touched. But their silence made you doubt it. Their inconsistency made you question it. Their distance made you feel unappreciated. Their hesitation made you feel undesirable. And now they want to say, you were not imagining the connection. You were not misreading their energy. You were not delusional. You were not overthinking. You were not loving alone. They felt it. Deeply. Strongly. Intensely. They just didn't know how to put it into words. They didn't know how to open their heart in a way that didn't scare them. They didn't know how to give love from a place they hadn't healed. Now they want to tell you the truth about the moments you questioned. They want to tell you they noticed every time you pulled back. And it hurt them. Even though they pretended not to care. They want to tell you they watched you detach. And it scared them. Because they realized they were losing the one person who actually saw them. They want to tell you they replayed your conversations. Over and over. Trying to understand where it all went wrong. Trying to figure out what they should have said. What they should have done. What they should have been. They want to tell you that your absence was louder than your presence ever was. Because when you were there, they took it for granted. But when you were gone, their world felt empty. They want to tell you that the days you thought they forgot about you, those were the days you were on their mind the most. They tried to distract themselves. Tried to work. Tried to socialize. Tried to move on. But nothing silenced your memory. Nothing replaced your energy. Nothing dimmed the impact you left on their soul. They want to tell you they prayed about you. Even when they didn't know how to explain the heaviness. Even when they didn't know what they were asking God for. Even when they weren't ready for the answer. They want to tell you they wished they communicated better. They wished they were more emotionally available. They wished they had let you into the parts of them they kept hidden. They wished they hadn't pushed you away. They wished they hadn't shut down. They wished they hadn't left you confused. They want to tell you they always saw your value. They just didn't know how to honor it. They always recognized your worth. They just didn't know how to match it. They always felt your love. They just didn't know how to reciprocate it. And now, for the first time, they want to say everything they didn't say. They want to say, you mattered, more than you knew. They want to say, they were scared, more than they admitted. They want to say, they were overwhelmed, more than they showed. They want to say, they were in love, more than they understood. They want to say, you changed them, more than they realized at the time. This is the conversation they wish they had the courage to have with you months ago, years ago, back when the connection was new, raw, fragile, powerful. They want to say you deserved clarity, and they didn't give it. You deserved honesty, and they didn't offer it. You deserved reassurance, and they didn't provide it. You deserved consistency, and they didn't deliver it. But now, they have something they didn't have back then. Self-awareness, emotional maturity, accountability, understanding, healing. And with that healing comes truth. Not the filtered truth, not the convenient truth, not the rehearsed truth, but the real truth, the raw truth, the truth they avoided. They want to tell you that losing you was the wake-up call. Your absence was their turning point. Your silence was their mirror. Your distance was their revelation. They want to tell you they're ready to speak, ready to share, ready to express, ready to open up, ready to finally say the words their soul has been holding. You deserve to hear it then, but they're finally ready to say it now. Number 6, they're ready to admit how much your absence transformed them. Your soulmate has reached a level of honesty they couldn't reach before, a level of maturity, a level of emotional clarity, a level of spiritual awareness. And with that clarity comes a confession they were once too afraid to speak. Your absence changed them. Not a little, not slightly, not eventually, but profoundly. Your absence became the thing they didn't know they needed, the thing that forced them to see themselves, the thing that made them confront every wound, every fear, every pattern, every shadow they kept hidden. Your absence became the mirror they couldn't avoid, the mirror that showed them the version of themselves they had become, and the version of themselves they were meant to become. When you stepped back, they felt it instantly, but they pretended they were fine, pretended it didn't bother them, pretended they were unbothered, pretended they were strong. But silence has a way of exposing truth. Distance has a way of illuminating what presence once softened. Loneliness has a way of stripping away ego. And that's exactly what happened to them. Your absence broke down walls they never intended to face. Walls built from childhood wounds. Walls built from past relationships. Walls built from fear and distrust. Walls built from disappointment. Walls built from survival. When you left their space, those walls didn't protect them anymore. They trapped them. Your absence forced them to examine why they push away love, why they sabotage connection, why they shut down when emotions get real, why they withdraw when someone genuinely cares, why intimacy feels overwhelming, why vulnerability feels dangerous. They began to realize it wasn't you they were running from, it was themselves, their fears, their insecurities, their unresolved emotions, their fear of being fully seen. Your absence confronted them in ways your presence never could. Sometimes love teaches through closeness. Other times love teaches through distance. Your absence forced them to feel everything they had numbed, everything they tried to escape, everything they tried to distract themselves from. They felt the weight of regret, the weight of unspoken words, the weight of missed opportunities, the weight of their own emotional limitations. They felt the pain of losing someone who actually cared, someone who showed up, someone who offered depth, someone who offered truth, someone who offered real connection. Your absence created a silence that made them listen. Listen to their own spirit. Listen to their own patterns. Listen to their own needs. Listen to their own broken places. It was in that silence that they realized how much they needed to grow, how much they needed to heal, how much they needed to become a better version of themselves. Not for you, but for their own soul. Your absence taught them emotional responsibility, taught them empathy, it taught them value, it taught them maturity, it taught them that love is not something to push away, but something to honor. They learned that love requires communication, consistency, vulnerability, presence, honesty, accountability. Your absence stripped them of excuses. It stripped them of denial. It stripped them of pride. It stripped them of avoidance. It forced them into truth, into awareness, into transformation. Your absence showed them what their life feels like without your energy, and it felt empty, dull, heavy, unbalanced, spiritually quiet. You weren't just a chapter. You were a turning point. You were a mirror. You were a catalyst. Your absence didn't just change their feelings. It changed their character. It changed their priorities. It changed their emotional patterns. It changed the way they see relationships. It changed the way they see themselves. They learned what you were, not when you were in their life, but when you were no longer accessible. Your absence taught them love, patience, humility, self-reflection. And now, they are filled with something they didn't have before: reverence, understanding, gratitude. They don't see you as an option. They see you as alignment. They don't see you as convenient. They see you as divine placement. They don't see you as temporary. They see you as transformative. And now, for the first time, they want to tell you the truth. Your absence didn't just hurt them. It healed them. It awakened them. It matured them. It humbled them. It prepared them. And that preparation is the reason they're finally ready to speak. Number 7, they're about to make the move that proves everything you felt was real. There comes a moment in every divine connection where energy becomes action, where intention becomes movement, where silent truth becomes undeniable reality. Your soulmate is stepping into that moment now. For a long time, this connection lived in the spiritual space, in emotion, in intuition, in dreams, in synchronicities, in signs, in the energy you felt but could not fully explain. You felt the pull, the shift, the spiritual tension, the hidden longing, the quiet recognition, the rising pressure of something that wanted to reveal itself. You weren't imagining it. You weren't projecting. You weren't delusional. What you were feeling was real. And now it is about to take physical form. Your person is reaching a point where silence can no longer hold what their heart has been carrying. They are tired of wondering, tired of suppressing, tired of hiding, tired of pretending they don't feel what they feel. They are ready to move. And not just any move. Not a small gesture. Not an indirect hint. Not a subtle check-in. Not a breadcrumb of emotion. They are about to make a move that reveals everything. The kind of move that takes courage. The kind of move that requires maturity. The kind of move that exposes truth. The kind of move that dissolves confusion. A move that proves your intuition was right. A move that proves your patience was not in vain. A move that proves the connection was mutual. A move that proves the silence was not the end. A move that proves the distance was preparation. A move that proves God was working behind the scenes. They have reached a point where fear is no longer stronger than the desire to be honest. Where doubt is no longer louder than their soul. Where pride is no longer a shield. Where ego can no longer block the heart. They are ready to step toward you. Not out of loneliness. Not out of impulse. Not out of nostalgia. But out of clarity. They want to show you, not just tell you, that you mattered. That you still matter. That the connection didn't fade. That the bond didn't break. That what they felt never left. This move will surprise you. Not because you didn't sense it coming, but because you didn't expect them to be this bold, this open, this transparent, this committed. Their actions will speak in a way their words never could. Their presence will communicate what their silence never did. Their effort will reveal what their fear once hid. They want to show up. In a real way. In a present way. In a consistent way. In a way that matches the spiritual weight of this connection. They are ready to reach out. To close the distance. To step forward. To take responsibility. To acknowledge the connection with their whole chest. You are about to witness physical confirmation of everything your soul knew. Everything your intuition whispered. Everything your heart held onto. Everything divine timing prepared. This is not the end. It is the turning point. Your soulmate is about to make the move. The one that proves everything you felt was right all along. This moment you are stepping into is not random. The shift you feel is not your imagination. The urgency pressing on your chest is heaven trying to get your attention. Your soulmate has a message that can no longer stay hidden. A truth they have carried quietly. A confession they tried to avoid. A realization that has changed everything for them. Heaven is pushing it forward now. Because this message is meant to unlock your next chapter. Your healing. Your clarity. Your confirmation. Your soulmate is ready to reveal the words they were once too afraid to speak. The words that explain their silence. The words that reveal their growth. The words that confirm what your spirit has felt all along. And you need to be ready to receive it. This message is filled with emotional truth, spiritual alignment, divine timing, and a level of vulnerability they have never shown anyone before. When it reaches you, it will shift something inside you. It will bring the clarity you prayed for. It will release the weight you've been carrying. It will show you exactly why heaven orchestrated every delay, every distance, every pause. Heaven needs you to hear this message, because it doesn't just affect your heart. It affects your purpose, your path, your alignment. What comes next requires preparation, understanding, and readiness. And that is why this is the perfect time for you to stay connected. If you want to know what happens next, if you want deeper guidance, if you want the next revelations, if you want the next part of this message, make sure you subscribe now. Your next confirmation is coming. Your next clarity is on the way. Your next message from their soul is already forming. I release these updates in real time. And I don't want you to miss what heaven is getting ready to reveal next. Hit subscribe. Join the community. Stay connected. Because the next part of their message will be even deeper, even clearer, even more divine. And you won't want to miss it. Amen.